The throne room of Valora Prime was made of living crystal. The walls grew from the ground like frozen waterfalls, catching the light of 3 moons that hung in the purple sky. Thousands of Valorans filled the great hall, their silver skin shining, their large dark eyes watching the center of the room where something unusual was about to happen. Princess Nari stood in the shadows near a crystal pillar. She was the younger daughter of Emperor Doyun, and shadows were where she belonged. At least, that was what everyone at court believed. Her older sister Yuna stood beside their father's throne. Beautiful and proud, her silver hair arranged in the style of the air. Nari's hair was simple, pulled back from her face. She preferred it that way. Today, General Quan was presenting a gift to the emperor. A prisoner captured during a border fight near the outer colonies. But this was no ordinary prisoner. This was a human. Nari felt her heart beat faster. She had studied humans for years, in secret. She had read their books, listened to their music through illegal data crystals, learned their languages. The Valoran Empire considered humans to be primitive creatures, barely worth attention. They were young as species went. They lived short lives. They could not touch minds the way Valorans could, but Nari knew there was more to them. The humans had spread across the galaxy in just a few centuries. They had survived wars, plagues, and disasters that would have destroyed other species. There was something special about them, something the Valoran court refused to see. The great doors opened, and the human was brought in. He was tall, taller than most Valorans. His skin was a warm brown color, so different from Valoran silver. His black hair was cut short, and there were scars on his face and arms. He wore torn military clothes and heavy chains connected his wrists. 4 Valoran guards walked beside him, their weapons ready, but the human walked like he was not a prisoner at all. His back was straight. His eyes were calm. He looked around the throne room not with fear, but with careful attention. Like a soldier studying a battlefield, Nari could not look away from him. Emperor Doyan, General Quan announced, bowing low. I present to you Captain Taiho of the Human Defense Fleet. He commanded the ship that destroyed 3 of our cruisers before we captured him. He is called the Unbreakable by his people. Whispers filled the throne room. 3 cruisers. 1 human ship. It seemed impossible. Emperor Doyan leaned forward on his throne. He was old. His silver skin faded to gray, but his eyes were still sharp. Bring him closer. The guards pushed Taiho forward. He did not stumble. He stopped before the throne and met the emperor's eyes directly. In Valoran culture, this was deeply disrespectful. Prisoners were supposed to kneel and look at the floor. Taiho did neither. You dare to look at me, human? The emperor asked. I am a soldier, Taiho replied. His voice was steady. I do not bow to enemies. I stand or I fall. There is nothing in between. The court gasped. Nari felt a strange warmth spread through her chest. She had read about human courage in books. Seeing it in person was something else entirely. Emperor Doyan raised his hand. Several Valoran priests stepped forward. They were mind readers, powerful telepaths who could break into any consciousness and extract its secrets. Prisoners usually screamed when the priests touched their minds. Some went mad. The priests surrounded Taiho. They closed their eyes and reached out with their thoughts. Nothing happened. The priests frowned. They tried again, pushing harder. Sweat appeared on their silver foreheads. One of them made a sound of frustration. We cannot enter his mind, the head priest admitted, his voice shaking. There is a wall. We cannot break through. The throne room fell silent. This had never happened before. Valoran telepathy was their greatest weapon, their greatest source of power. No species had ever resisted it completely. Princess Yuna stepped forward. She was beautiful in the way a knife was beautiful, sharp and dangerous. Her dark eyes examined Taiho like he was a new toy she wanted to play with. Interesting, she said softly. Father, I want him. Emperor Doyon looked at his older daughter. Want him? As my personal attendant? A trophy. Yuna smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Let me show the court that even the strongest human is nothing but a pet for Valoran royalty. Nari's hands tightened into fists. She wanted to speak, to object, but she knew her place. The younger princess. The invisible one. Her voice meant nothing here. "Very well," the emperor said. "He is yours, Yuna. Do what you wish with him." Yuna's smile grew wider. She walked toward Taiho, her silver robes flowing behind her. She circled him slowly, like a predator examining prey. "You will learn to kneel," she whispered to him. "They all do eventually." Taiho did not respond. His face showed nothing. But as Yuna turned away to speak with her father, his eyes moved across the room, and they found Nari. She froze. She should have looked away. She should have hidden behind the pillar, but she could not move. Something in his gaze held her in place. He was studying her the way she had been studying him. She saw questions in his eyes. She saw curiosity. And she saw something that surprised her most of all: recognition, as if he could see past her simple clothes and her invisible status. As if he could see who she really was underneath. Then the guards pulled him away. The moment was broken. Nara watched them take him through a side door, toward the royal wing where Yuna kept her quarters. Her heart was beating too fast. Her thoughts were confused. She had spent years reading about humans, dreaming about them, wondering what it would be like to meet one. Now a human was here, in her home, and he would belong to her sister. The thought hurt more than it should have. "Little sister." Yuna's voice came from beside her. Nari had not noticed her approach. "I saw you staring at my new pet. Do not get any ideas. He is mine now." "I was only curious," Nari said quietly. "I have never seen a human before. You never will again, if you are smart." Yuna's eyes were cold. "Stay in your shadows, Nari. That is where you belong." She walked away, her silver hair catching the moonlight. Nari stood alone in the emptying throne room. The crystal walls hummed softly around her. Through a high window, she could see the 3 moons of Valora rising into the night sky. Somewhere in the palace, a human warrior was being taken to his cage. A man who had destroyed 3 cruisers, a man whose mind could not be broken. A man who had looked at her like she mattered. Nari made a decision. She would find a way to speak with him. She did not know why it felt so important. She only knew that it was, for the first time in her life. The younger princess of Valora stepped out of the shadows. 3 weeks passed on Valora Prime. The moons continued their slow dance across the purple sky. The crystal palace hummed with gossip about the human prisoner who could not be broken. Princess. Yuna paraded Captain Taiho at every court function. She dressed him in fine Valoran clothes that looked strange on his human frame. She made him stand beside her chair while she entertained guests. She showed him off like a rare animal she had captured. But Taiho would not perform for her. He stood where she told him to stand. He walked where she told him to walk. But he did not kneel. He did not bow. He did not show fear or submission. His eyes remained calm, his back remained straight, and no matter what Yuna did, she could not make him look defeated. It was driving her mad. Nari watched all of this from her usual place in the shadows. She attended court functions because she had to, but no one paid attention to her. The younger princess, the quiet one, the one who spent her time reading instead of seeking power, she used her invisibility well. She learned that Taiho was allowed supervised exercise in the Western Gardens every morning. The guards considered him dangerous, but he had not tried to escape. He seemed to understand that running was pointless on a planet far from human space. On the 5th day of the 4th week, Nari found the courage to visit the gardens. She went early, before the sun had fully risen. The Western Gardens were empty except for 2 board guards and 1 human prisoner walking slowly among the crystal flowers. Nari sat on a bench near the fountain. She pretended to read a book. Her hands were shaking. Taiho noticed her immediately. He paused in his walk and looked at her. The guards tensed, but he made no move toward her. "You are the other princess," he said. His voice was deep and calm. "The one who watches from the shadows." Nari looked up from her book. Her heart was beating very fast. "You noticed me?" "I notice everything. It is how I have stayed alive." tilted his head slightly. You look at me differently than the others do. Why? She did not know how to answer. Because I have dreamed of meeting a human. Because you fascinate me. Because when you looked at me in the throne room, I felt seen for the first time in my life. I have studied your species, she said instead. For many years, in secret, something changed in his expression. A flicker of interest. Why in secret? Because Valorans believe humans are primitive, barbaric, not worth understanding. She closed her book. I have never agreed with that belief. The guards were watching them now. Nari knew she did not have much time. I will come again tomorrow, she said quickly. If you wish to talk, she left before he could respond. But the next morning, when she arrived at the garden, he was already waiting by the fountain. Their conversation started slowly. Nari asked questions about Earth, about human culture, about the things she had read in books, but never fully understood. Taiho answered carefully at first, watching her with suspicious eyes. He expected tricks. He expected her to be like her sister. But days passed, and Nari kept coming. She brought him things. A data crystal with human music she had found in an illegal market. A book of human poetry translated into Valoran. A small device that showed images of Earth, its blue oceans and green forests, so different from Valora's crystal landscape. Taiho's suspicion began to fade. Why do you care about these things? He asked one morning. Your people rule a great empire. Humans are nothing compared to Valoran power. Nari sat beside him on the stone bench. The guards had grown used to her visits and paid less attention now. Power is not everything, she said. The Valoran Empire is old and tired. We have not created anything new in centuries. We only maintain what already exists. She looked at him. But humans, you are always creating, always growing, always pushing forward. I read about your history. You have faced so many terrible things. Wars that killed millions. Diseases that nearly destroyed you. And every time, you survived. You came back stronger. Taiho was quiet for a moment. That is because we have no choice. We are not like Valorans. We do not live for centuries. We do not have telepathy or crystal cities. All we have is each other and the refusal to give up. That is exactly what fascinates me. Naresa's voice was soft. Your people choose to be strong. It is not something you are born with. It is something you build. Taiho looked at her differently after that, not with suspicion. Not with the cold distance he showed Yuna, but with something warmer. Something like respect. He began to share more. He told her about his home, small city near the mountains of a country called Korea. He told her about his mother, who had died when he was young, and the songs she used to sing to him at night. When he described those songs, his voice changed. It became softer. More human. Nar. I found tears in her eyes. She did not know why. You miss her, she said. Every day. Looked at the crystal flowers around them. On Earth, we plant flowers on graves. We believe the dead can smell them somehow. I have not been able to visit my mother's grave in 5 years. I'm sorry. Do not be. Loss is part of being human. We carry our dead with us, in our hearts. They make us stronger. Nari understood then why humans were different. They did not run from pain. They did not hide from grief. They let it change them, shape them, make them more than they were before. She wanted to be like that. Their meetings became the center of Nari's life. She counted the hours until morning. She lay awake at night thinking about their conversations. She began to realize that what she felt was more than curiosity. It was dangerous. It was impossible. But it was real then. Yuna discovered everything. It happened at a banquet. Nari was standing in her usual corner when Yuna approached with a group of court ladies. Her smile was sharp as broken glass. Everyone, look at my little sister, Yuna announced loudly. She has been visiting my human pet every morning, bringing him gifts. Talking to him for hours, she laughed, and the court ladies laughed with her. Poor Nari, so desperate for attention that she befriends an animal. The room went quiet. Everyone was staring. Nari felt her face burn with shame. It is not like that, she whispered. Of course it is. Yuna stepped closer, her voice dropping to a hiss. Stay away from what is mine, little sister, or I will make you regret it. She turned back to the crowd and raised her voice. I have wonderful news to announce. I have requested Father's permission to formally bond with the human. He will become my royal consort, a symbol of Valoran's supremacy over the primitive species. The court erupted in excited whispers. Nari felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. Bonding. The ancient Valoran ritual that linked two minds together. For humans, the process was said to be extremely painful, sometimes fatal. Yuna was going to destroy him to prove a point. Nari looked across the room and found Taiho standing in his usual place beside Yuna's empty chair. His face showed nothing, but his eyes found hers through the crowd. In that moment, something passed between them. Something unspoken, something that felt like a promise. Nari did not know what she was going to do. She only knew she had to do something. Her sister would not take this from her. Not this time. Not him. The news of Princess Yuna's bonding ceremony spread through the palace like fire. Everyone was talking about it. The first Valoran royal to take a human as a consort. Some called it bold. Some called it cruel. No one called it wrong. Emperor Doyan gave his approval without hesitation. He saw it as a political statement, a message to the human coalition that their strongest warriors were nothing but toys for Valoran royalty. The ceremony was set for the next lunar cycle, just 3 weeks away. Nari could not sleep. She could not eat. She spent her nights pacing her chambers, trying to think of a way to stop what was coming. She went to the great library and read everything she could find about bonding ceremonies. What she learned made her sick with fear. The ritual required a deep telepathic connection between both parties. For Valorans, it was intense but manageable. For other species, especially those with natural mental resistance like humans, the process was like having your mind torn open by force. Some survived. Many did not. And those who survived were often broken. Their sense of self shattered into pieces that never fit together again. Yuna knew this. She simply did not care. On the 5th day after the announcement, Nari went to see her father. She found him in his private study, surrounded by ancient crystals that held the memories of past emperors. Father, she said, bowing deeply, I wish to speak with you about the bonding ceremony. Emperor Doyan looked at his younger daughter with tired eyes. He was very old now. The weight of ruling an empire had bent his shoulders and dimmed his silver skin. You disagree with your sister's choice, he said. It was not a question. Human will likely die, Nari said. Or worse. And if he dies, the human coalition may demand answers. They may demand justice. This could lead to war. War. The emperor made a sound that might have been a laugh. With humans, they are scattered across 1,000 colonies. They have no unity, no central power. What could they possibly do to the Valoran Empire? They destroyed 3 of our cruisers with a single ship, Nari reminded him. Their captain sits in our palace right now, and our telepaths cannot touch his mind. Perhaps we have underestimated them. For a moment, something flickered in the Emperor's eyes. Doubt, perhaps, or fear. But then it was gone. Yuna has made her decision, he said. I will not reverse it. The ceremony will proceed. Father, please, enough. His voice was cold. You are dismissed. Nari left the study with despair heavy in her chest. There was no help coming from the Emperor. There was no one in the court who would stand against Yuna. She was alone that night. She went to the detention level where Taiho was being held. The guards knew her now. They let her pass without question. She found his cell at the end of a long corridor. The door made of energy rather than metal. Taiho was sitting on the floor, his back against the wall. When he saw her, he stood slowly. You should not be here, he said. Your sister will punish you, I do not care. Nari pressed her hand against the energy barrier. It hummed beneath her fingers. I tried to stop the ceremony. I spoke to my father. He refused to listen. I know. Das. Voice was calm. I expected nothing less. How can you be so calm? Tears were forming in her eyes. They are going to destroy your mind. They are going to kill you, maybe. He stepped closer to the barrier. But I have faced death before. Many times. It holds no power over me anymore. It's different. This is not a battle. This is torture. All the more reason to face it with dignity. His eyes met hers through the shimmering barrier. I am a soldier, Princess. I knew from the day I put on the uniform that I might die far from home. I accepted that. What I will not accept is running away and leaving my people to suffer for my escape. Nari did not understand at first. Then it became clear. The colonies, she whispered. The human colonies near Valoran space. If I escape, your empire will retaliate against them. Innocent people, families, children. Taiho shook his head. I cannot buy my freedom with their lives. That is not who I am. The tears were falling freely now. Nari had never cried for anyone before. She had barely cried for herself. But this man, this human, who had every reason to hate her and her people, was willing to die to protect strangers he would never meet. It broke something inside her, and it built something new. I want to help you escape, she said. I have access to the ship docks. I couldn't know. His voice was gentle but firm. I told you, I will not run. Then what can I do? She was begging now, her pride forgotten. Tell me what to do. Taiho was silent for a long moment. Then he asked a question she did not expect. Why do you care so much about what happens to me? Nara's breath caught in her throat. The truth sat on her tongue, heavy and frightening. Because you see me. Because when I am with you, I do not feel invisible. Because I have spent my whole life reading about humans, dreaming about them, and you are more than anything I ever imagined. Because I think I am falling in love with you. She could not say any of it. The words would not come. I do not know, she lied. Something in Taiho's expression told her he saw through the lie. But he did not push. Go back to your rooms, Princess. Get some sleep. Whatever happens in the ceremony, I want you to know that our conversations meant something to me. You showed me kindness when everyone else showed cruelty. I will not forget that. Nari fled before he could see her completely break down. In the days that followed, she avoided the gardens. She avoided the court. She spent her time alone, searching desperately for some solution, some way to save him that would not cost innocent lives. High Advisor Juan found her in the library one evening. He was a thin, sharp-faced Valoran, with ambitions that everyone in the palace whispered about. He served the emperor, but he served himself more. Princess Nari, he said smoothly, I hear you have concerns about the bonding ceremony. She looked at him with suspicious eyes. What do you want, advisor? I represent certain interests in the court. People who believe the emperor's policies are leading us toward disaster. People who would prefer a different direction for our empire. He sat across from her. We can stop the ceremony. We can free the human. All we need is your cooperation. In exchange for what? Guan's smile was thin and cold. Nothing much. Simply help us access certain areas of the palace at the right time. The rest will take care of itself. Nari understood immediately. Guan did not want to save Taiho. He wanted to use Taiho as a weapon against the emperor. A scandal, perhaps. Or something worse. Taiho would be freed only to become a different kind of prisoner. No, she said. Guan's smile faded. Think carefully, Princess. We are your only option. I said no. She stood up. Find another tool for your games, advisor. I will not be part of them. She left him there in the library, his cold eyes following her, the night before the ceremony. Nari stood on her balcony and watched the 3 moons rise. Somewhere in the palace, servants were preparing the great hall. Somewhere in a cell, Taiho was facing his last night of freedom. She had failed. She had tried everything, and she had failed. But as the moons climbed higher, a strange calm settled over her. She remembered what Taiho had said about humans. They did not give up. They kept fighting, even when victory seemed impossible. They found a way, or they made one. If she was going to love a human, perhaps she needed to learn to be a little human herself. There had to be something she had missed. Some law, some tradition, some loophole that could save him. She went back to the library. She searched until her eyes burned. And just before dawn, She found it an ancient rite, a forgotten law, a chance it was almost impossible. It would require Taiho to do something no alien had ever done, but it was a chance. Nari grabbed the old scroll and ran toward the detention level. There was still time. The grand ceremonial hall of Valora Prime had never been so full. Thousands of Valorans packed the crystal galleries, their silver skins shining under the light of floating orbs. Dignitaries from across the empire had traveled for days to witness this moment. The bonding of Princess Yunea to a human warrior. A spectacle that would be remembered for centuries. Princess Nari sat in the front row, where she had been placed as a position of honor. Honor, she thought bitterly. Her sister wanted her there to watch, to see Yuna claim what Nari secretly desired. It was another form of cruelty, but Nari did not feel defeated. Not anymore. She had found Taiho in his cell just before dawn. She had shown him the ancient scroll, explained the forgotten law, taught him the words he needed to speak. It was a desperate plan. Everything depended on Taiho's ability to do the impossible. But if anyone could do the impossible, it was him. The ceremony began with music. Valoran instruments filled the air with sounds that felt like colors. Priests in white robes walked in slow procession, carrying crystals that pulsed with ancient power. The crowd fell silent. Princess Yuna entered through the main doors. She was dressed in ceremonial robes of deep purple, the color of royalty. Her silver hair was arranged in an elaborate style that took hours to create. She looked beautiful and terrible, like a queen from an old nightmare. Behind her came Taiho. He wore simple white clothes, a traditional dress of those being bonded. His wrists were free of chains for the first time since his capture, but guards walked close beside him. His face showed nothing. His eyes were calm as he walked down the central aisle, his gaze swept across the crowd. For just a moment, it stopped on Nari. Something passed between them. A question, an answer, a promise. Then he looked forward again, and the moment was gone. Emperor Doyan sat on his throne at the front of the hall. He raised his hand, and the music stopped. "We gather today to witness a bonding," he announced. "Princess Yuna, heir to the Valoran throne, has chosen this human as her consort. Let the ritual begin." The priests formed a circle around Yuna and Taiho. They began to chant in the old language, words that had not changed in 10,000 years. The crystals in their hands began to glow brighter. Yuna turned to face Taiho. Her smile was sharp with triumph. She commanded. Taiho did not move. Said, "Kneel." Her voice was harder. "Now, I heard you." Taiho's voice was clear and steady. It carried across the silent hall. "I choose not to." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Yuna's face twisted with anger. "You do not have a choice. You are my property. You will submit to this bonding, or you will be destroyed." "No." Taiho took a step forward. The guards moved to stop him, but the priests raised their hands. Interrupting a ceremony was forbidden. "I invoke the right of Kellam," Taiho said. The words fell like stones into still water. The priests froze. The emperor leaned forward on his throne. Whispers exploded through the galleries. Yuna's face went pale. "What did you say?" "The right of Kellam," Taiho repeated. "An ancient law of your people. It says that any being facing an unwanted bond may challenge for the right to choose their own partner. They must prove their worth through combat. If they win, they are free to choose. That law is for Valoran's Unispat, not for humans. Not for animals. The law does not specify species." Taiho's voice was calm. I read it very carefully. "Princess Nadia helped me understand the old language. The law says any being. It does not say any Valoran." Every eye in the hall turned to Nari. She felt her face burn. She lifted her chin and met their stares without flinching. Emperor Doyun stood slowly. His old face was unreadable. "The human speaks the truth," he said. "The law does not specify species. If he invokes the right of Kellam, we are bound by tradition to honor it. Father." Yuna's voice was sharp with betrayal. "You cannot be serious." I am the Emperor. I am always serious. He looked at Taiho with something that might have been curiosity. You understand what this means, human? You must defeat 3 champions in unarmed combat. No weapons. No rest between fights. If you lose even one, the bond proceeds as planned, and you will be in no condition to resist. I understand, Taiho said. Very well. The Emperor gestured to his guards. Bring the champions. The next hour changed everything. The first champion was a soldier named Hyuk-young, and eager to prove himself. He was faster than Taiho, his Valoran reflexes giving him an advantage. But Taiho was patient. He let Huck attack again and again, studying his movements, learning his patterns. When the moment came, Taiho moved with sudden, explosive power. One strike to the chest. One sweep of the legs. Hyuk hit the crystal floor and did not get up. The crowd was silent. The second champion was a palace guard named Wu, older and more experienced. He was careful, defensive, trying to tire Taiho out. But humans were built for endurance. Taiho's ancestors had hunted animals by chasing them until they collapsed from exhaustion. He kept pressing forward, kept attacking, and when Wu finally made a mistake, Taiho was there. An arm around the neck. Pressure on the right points. Wu went limp. Now the crowd was whispering, excited, afraid. The third champion was General Quan himself, the man who had captured Taiho in the first place. He was the best fighter in the Valoran military. He had killed dozens of enemies with his bare hands. But Taiho had killed hundreds. The fight was brutal. Quan landed blows that would have stopped any Valoran. Taiho bled from his mouth, from his nose, from cuts above his eyes. But he did not fall. He kept coming forward, kept fighting, his human body absorbing punishment that should have been fatal. And slowly, impossibly, Quan began to tire. Valorans were not built for long fights. Their bodies were elegant but fragile. Quan's movements became slower. His breath became ragged. And Taiho, bloody and bruised, kept coming. The end came quickly. Quan threw a desperate punch. Taiho caught his arm, twisted, and brought him down. One knee on Quan's chest. One hand on his throat, Taiho said. General Quan's eyes were wide with shock. With fear, with something that might have been respect. I yield, he whispered. The hall erupted. Some cheered. Some screamed in outrage, but the law was clear. Taiho stood slowly. Blood dripped from his face onto the crystal floor. He was breathing hard, his body shaking with exhaustion. But he was still standing. He turned to face the Emperor. I have one, he said. By the right of Kellam, I claim the freedom to choose my own bondmate. So you have. Emperor Doyun's voice was strange, almost impressed. Then choose human. Who will you bond with? The hall fell silent. Yuna stepped forward, her face pale but determined. She still believed he would choose her. She was the princess, the heir, the most beautiful woman in the empire. Who else could he possibly choose? Taiho's eyes moved across the crowd. They stopped on Nari. Her, he said. I choose her. The silence was absolute, perfect, endless. Yuna made a sound like something breaking, and Nari. The invisible princess, the forgotten daughter, the one who lived in shadows, felt her heart explode with light, the chaos that followed. Taiho's choice lasted for hours. Princess Yuna screamed at her father, demanding that the choice be cancelled. She called Taiho an animal, a beast, a creature not worthy of Valoran law. She called Nari a traitor, a thief, a snake who had stolen what was rightfully hers. Emperor Doyen listened in silence. When Yuna finally ran out of words, he spoke. The law is clear. The right of Kellam has been invoked and satisfied. The human's choice stands. Father, please. Yuna's voice broke. For a moment, she looked like a child again. A child who had been told no for the first time in her life. Enough. The Emperor's voice was firm. You brought this upon yourself, Yuna. You wanted to humiliate the human. You wanted to prove Valoran's supremacy. Instead, you have shown the entire empire that a single human warrior can defeat our best fighters. He shook his head. Go to your chambers. Do not show your face at court for 1 month. Consider what lessons you might learn from this day. Yuna stared at her father with eyes full of hatred. Then she turned and swept out of the hall, her purple robes trailing behind her like the tail of a poisonous creature. As she passed Nari, she paused for just a moment. This is not over, little sister, she whispered. I will make you pay for this. Both of you. And she was gone. And Nari found she did not care about the threat. She had spent her whole life afraid of Yuna. Today, that fear had lost its power. The crowd slowly dispersed. The priests quietly collected their crystals. The guards carried away the defeated champions. Soon, the great hall was nearly empty. Emperor Doyan approached Nari. She braced herself for anger. For disappointment? For the cold dismissal she had received her entire life? Instead, her father studied her with curious eyes. You taught him the old laws, he said. You've planned this? Yes. Father? Why? What is this human to you? Nari thought carefully before answering. He is proof that we have been wrong about humans. They are not primitive or weak. They are different from us. Yes. But different does not mean lesser. She met her father's gaze. Perhaps it is time for the Valoran Empire to see humans as potential allies, rather than potential subjects. The Emperor was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, his old face softened. I never understood you, Nari. You were always quiet. Always watching. I thought you had nothing to offer the Empire. Shook his head. I was wrong. Perhaps I have been wrong about many things. He reached out and touched her cheek gently. It was the first time he had touched her with affection since she was a small child. Make your bond with the human, he said, but do it privately. The court has had enough excitement for one day. Then he walked away, his aged shoulders seeming lighter than before. Nara found Taiho in a small medical room where Valoran healers were treating his wounds. He sat patiently while they applied crystal-based medicines to his cuts and bruises. When Nari entered, the healers bowed and left them alone. You are hurt, she said. I have been hurt worse. He looked at her with something warm in his eyes. You came for me? In the end, you found a way. I could not let them take you. Her voice was barely a whisper. I could not let her have you. Why? He stood slowly and walked toward her. In the cell, I asked you why you cared. You said you did not know. Was that the truth? Nari's heart was beating so hard she thought it might break through her chest. She had spent her whole life hiding in shadows, hiding her feelings, hiding herself. But Taiho had already seen through every wall she had built. No, she admitted. It was not the truth. Then tell me now. The real reason. She looked into his human eyes, so different from Valoran eyes. So full of warmth and life and something that felt like home. Because I love you, she said. The words hung in the air between them, heavy, terrifying. Trudeau Taiho reached out and took her hand. His skin was warm, rougher than Valoran's skin, marked by years of fighting and surviving. Your sister wanted to own me, he said. She wanted to possess me like a trophy, to control me, to break me into something that served her pride. He squeezed her hand gently. You never wanted any of that. You wanted to understand me, to know me, to connect with me as a person, not a possession. His voice softened. That is not a small difference, Nari. That is everything. Tears were streaming down her face now. Silver Valoran tears that caught the light like liquid crystal. I do not know how to do this, she whispered. I have never loved anyone before. I do not know if I can be what you need. Taiho smiled, and it transformed his scarred face into something beautiful. I just need you to be yourself. That is more than enough. Their bonding ceremony was held that night in a small garden under the 3 moons. There were no crowds, no politics, no spectacle. Just Nari Taiho, the Emperor, as witness, a single priest to speak the ancient words. The telepathic connection was different than Nari expected. She had been taught that bonding with a non-Valoran would be difficult, maybe painful. But when she reached for Taiho's mind, she found not resistance, but welcome. He let her in willingly, and she discovered something amazing. Humans might resist telepathy when it was forced upon them. But when they chose to open their hearts, they opened them completely. She saw his memories. His childhood in the mountains of Korea, his mother's face, kind and smiling. The day he joined the military, the battles he had fought, the friends he had lost, the moments of terror and triumph that had shaped him into the man he was. And she saw herself through his eyes, not invisible, not forgotten, but bright and beautiful and worth fighting for. When the ceremony ended, they stood together under the moonlight, not quite sure what came next, not quite sure where this strange path would lead. What happens now? Nari asked. Before Taiho could answer, a guard ran into the garden. Princess Nari, a human ship has entered Valoran space. They are broadcasting a message demanding the release of Captain Taiho. They say they are prepared for war. Nari looked at Taiho. He looked back at her with something like hope in his eyes. People came for me, he said. They never stopped looking. They went to the communication center together. The human ship was called the Hope of Earth, and its commander was Lieutenant Siwoo Taihos, second in command. When he saw Taiho alive on the screen, his face broke into a wide smile. Captain, we thought we lost you. You almost did. Taiho's voice was thick with emotion. It is good to see you, old friend. Sua's eyes moved to Nari, standing beside Taiho. Confusion crossed his face. Who is this? This is Princess Nari of the Valoran Empire, Taiho said. My bondmate, and possibly the key to peace between our peoples. The conversation that followed was long and complicated. Diplomats were called, agreements were drafted. For the first time in history, humans and Valorans sat down together, not as enemies, but as potential allies. Nari stepped forward as a bridge between the two species. She understood both cultures. She could translate not just words, but meaning. She helped them see past their differences to find common ground. It was not easy. There were arguments, misunderstandings, moments when everything nearly fell apart. But in the end, a fragile peace was born. Months later, Nari stood on a balcony overlooking the capital city of Valora Prime. Human and Valoran diplomats walked together through the crystal streets. Ships from both species orbited peacefully overhead. Taiho came to stand beside her. You miss Earth, do you not? She asked. Sometimes. He put his arm around her shoulders. But some things are worth staying for. She leaned into him, feeling the warmth of his human body, so different from Valoran coldness. I want to see it someday. Your home, your mountains, your mother's grave.